Well, I thought you might fish or something with an electric boat. Even.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Al.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll say hi now.
The camera's live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, fellow directors, staff, those watching at home. I'd like to welcome you to today's corporate services meeting and acknowledge that we're meeting today in various parts of the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples. And thank them for their hospitality. Ms. Legault, looking for approval of the agenda?
Correct.
Do I have a mover? Thank you. A seconder? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. Ms. Legault?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. June 10th, 2020, adoption of those minutes.
Moved. Seconded. Any discussion on those minutes? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Thank you. M2.
M2 is the adoption of the corporate services, the special corporate services committee meeting minutes of September 9th.
Moved. Seconded. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. Thank you. No business arising, Ms. Legault?
None from staff.
Thank you. None from the directors? Thank you. Do we have public input this afternoon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have not received any public input for this meeting.
Very good. Thank you. So we'll invite the delegation back in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've brought the delegation into the meeting. Christy Fairholm-Mader, Coastal Community Social Procurement Initiative, has a presentation for information, and just for the committee's awareness, Erin Annis, our procurement officer, will speak to the last two slides of the presentation.
Good afternoon, Ms. Mader. Welcome. You have 10 minutes, but if you do need more, I'll be sure to ask the directors for some levity in allowing you some extra time.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it. I do have the PowerPoint, and so I'm wondering if it's possible for me to share my screen.
Please do.
I don't have the access to it to do that yet.
You should have permission to do that, but let me just...
So when I click on the share button, it says this meeting type requires that I become the presenter before sharing content.
You should have those
there I go.
now.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Okay, can everybody see that? Yes, everyone can see the screen now? Okay, great. Okay, I will start. So thank you so much for having me. My name is Christy Fairholm-Mader, and I'm with Scale Collaborative. And I'm going to talk today about the Coastal Community Social Procurement Initiative and a little bit about social procurement in general, why this is moving forward, and the structures of how it moves forward. I think you are already a member of the Coastal Community Social Procurement Initiative. And so really this looks at how procurement can be aligned to achieve your community goals. And the membership that you are part of means that you have access to tools, to resources, and supports to make this happen. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about, sorry, this is not clicking through. Not sure what's happening. Yeah, so it's stuck in terms of my ability to click. There we go. Okay, So I'm going to talk about the social procurement generally around what, why, and how. I'm going to talk about the initiative itself. And then Erin is going to come and talk about the CVRD participation within the initiative. I want to just also acknowledge that Rob Fisher is here. So I project manage the initiative along with our other partners, and Rob Fisher is the coordinator of the initiative. So he's the person that has a lot of contact with the implementers of the initiative. So first of all, we'd like to talk about procurement as a tool for stabilization and recovery and resilience, especially in light of COVID, is that this is a really great and important opportunity for local governments to be able to support social outcomes connected to employment, connected to training and apprenticeships, connected to community outcomes, and connected to local economies. So procurement can be a real solution to support those local economies and provide community benefits in this time. And the real big question is, are the dollars that you spend being extracted from local economies, or are they going into local economies to provide that community benefit? And we just made a note here around the kind of spend that is taking place underneath the membership and the region, and that procurement under 25K is around $110 million a year on Vancouver Island and the coast, and over 25K is 1.6 billion. So there's a lot of benefit that can come from procurement. And that procurement has been evolving over time. That we see that there used to be price and quality was the two determinants. In the 1960s, there began to be a recognition that environment and green outcomes were important in terms of procurement, and that we see in the emerging trend over the last 10 years or so that the social impacts of procurement are also becoming important to recognize and important to make intentional. And so what is social procurement? And essentially it's adding a social value to already purchasing. So this isn't new dollars, these are existing purchasing, and it's asking the questions and creating the direction to be able to say, what are the social outcomes and the community benefits from this? And out of that, we'd be able to say there's a purchaser value, there's a supplier value, there's a social or community value, and that comes into that aligned values that organizations and communities can achieve. And it's recognizing that every purchase does have an impact, and social procurement or sustainable procurement is a way to make that impact intentional. There's a few different pathways. There's two primary pathways of which social procurement takes place. There is the social purchasing of goods and services, and there's community benefit agreements, which is more along infrastructure processes. So, the purchasing of goods and services is the acquisition of all the items that you currently purchase for your operations, your production supply chain, and other regular business operations, such as, catering, cleaning, landscaping, property management, office supplies, couriers, all of that. And then community benefit agreements are connected to and define the social value or the social employment, the community employment outcomes that are delivered as part of major infrastructure or land development projects. And as I alluded to earlier, there's four main areas of which social procurement tends to be applied against. It's looking at employment, and employment that is local employment, as well as employment for people who may face barriers to employment. So employment of marginalized populations. There's opportunities for skills and training development and apprenticeships. It's looking at that social value supply chain. So for larger contracts and corporations, it's saying, can you turn and purchase from local suppliers, from social enterprises, from social purpose organizations, and so on. And then there's the other aspect, which is around community development and local economy. So people always ask, is it legal? And yes, it's legal, and it falls within the trade agreements. So trade agreements apply, and that there's parameters that they need to fall under. So one of the things that is key is that you cannot restrict competition, but you can require community outcomes from all bidders. So this is not a local first purchasing policy. This is a community outcomes and social value inclusion into your procurement. So everybody can bid on those contracts, everybody can be part of putting forward how they would achieve those social value outcomes. That trade agreements specifically have exceptions for contracting with nonprofits. So if you have social enterprises in your community, you can contract directly with those organizations and entities, which can be really important and helpful when you're looking at employment outcomes specifically for marginalized populations, or you're looking at achieving a specific social outcome. And that trade agreements all have financial thresholds. So underneath those financial thresholds, you can begin to do direct awards and provide those small buys into your local economy and for community outcome. So some of the ways that local governments can implement is looking specifically at your under threshold and direct award policies, doing a request for information. So we did this with City of Victoria, where they did an RFI into the local community to find out who are the social value vendors that already exist in the community, and then providing training to help them, respond to upcoming bids. Looking at including social value weighting into all of your purchasing processes and evaluation criteria, to unbundle big contracts so that smaller and local companies can bid, to look at community benefit agreements, and then to ask large contractors to look at their existing supply chains to offer local opportunities as part of that. So that's an overview of social procurement. I want to talk about the Coastal Community Social Procurement Initiative. It's a group of 22 member communities at this point, all the way from Victoria to Port Hardy to Tofino to Gibson, so it really spans the whole region. And the purpose of the initiative is to support and incubate social procurement across the region. It's delivered by 4 different team members. So we have by Social Canada and Presentations Plus, who are procurement experts. Scale Collaborative, the organization I'm with, we really work with vendors, goods and services suppliers, and social enterprises. And then the Vancouver Island Construction Association is working with the construction side. So we really took an ecosystem approach in putting together the delivery partners to work with the CCSBI initiative. At a glance, we're about a year and a half in, 22 local governments and organizations. There's about 200 individual members, because when you're as a member, you can sign up all your staff who would like to be involved as a member. There's been about $25 million of social procurement spend that's been mobilized, and there's been 20 plus pilot projects that have been undertaken or are currently underway. All members have access to these resources. You can see there's trainings and presentations. We do webinars on kind of what the current issues that are coming up. We have resources and templates, everything from social procurement policies to how to do social value menus, all the tools that are needed to enact and implement. There's a community of practice for the implementers, for your staff. There's support for pilots, and we build support and training for vendors as well to be able to respond. And we've recently partnered with Royal Roads, who is doing impact measurement for the whole project. There's also 10 hours of direct consultation support for every member. It does things like looking at your project review, reviewing your social procurement policy, doing that troubleshooting, helping with evaluation, whatever it is. And we get a whole bunch of different requests that come in from our members. To reemphasize that procurement is a solution, that it's a way to not only integrate your strategic plan, your community values into your procurement, but also to really support local economies and community outcomes during this time and beyond. And that it is a key tool in our toolbox for recovery, resilience, and rebuilding our local economies. So I'm going to pass it over to Erin at this point.
Thanks, Christy. So for those of you I haven't had the opportunity to meet face-to-face, I'm Erin Annis, and I'm the Procurement Officer for the Cowichan Valley Regional District. I want to thank Christy and Rob and the SCALE team for giving us an excellent overview of what the CCSPI is. I just wanted to provide a few very quick comments to sort of ground it in our local context. So we have participated as a member of the CCSPI since it started in 2018. And for our region, we have 80,000 folks, but we are participating as the 9 electoral area. So we're representing approximately 33,000 in population on CCSPI. The town of Ladysmith also participates. And then as far as I know, Duncan, North Cowichan, and the town of Lake Cowichan have yet to join or have not joined at this time. But Christy, if you don't mind going to the next slide, just to put our purchases into some context. So in looking at our own purchases, we spend about 7.5 million through our e-sourcing portal. So that's our 2019, we brought in Bonfire, which is our e-sourcing software for all competitions over 50,000, according to our policy. So we're spending about 7.5 million. That is a mix of supplies, equipment, and services. For 2020, we're already on track to have spent about 6 million through the portal. And in terms of our purchasing cards, or our lower value threshold BMO, we're spending about 1.5 million, and that will be an area that I discuss through the following staff report as an area that we might look at for looking at social procurement and how we can kind of move that forward in our own community. And Christy, one last slide, I think. But essentially, just to recap, we have been participating in the training. We do, obviously, with COVID and economic recovery becoming very fluid conversations and things that are top of mind, this is another tool that we might want to consider in our toolbox. As Christy said, it's not favoring local businesses, but it is requiring social value outcomes of all bidders, and that can have a very large benefit to our local community. So I think one thing that we want to keep in mind is matching demand with real opportunities and getting the word out. So part of this discussion today was just to highlight what CCSPI and social procurement are. And I will leave it at that. There is an accompanying staff report as well. So that's it from our team.
Great, thank you. If we could stop sharing and then we'll get the faces to come up, and I'm sure there may be some questions if you're okay with some of those. I'll look for some hands here. I have Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the two presenters there. It's something which I'm a great believer in local provision and all the rest of it. I've got a couple of questions here. First of all, do we, with this band of coastal communities, is there opportunities for all of us to cooperate together as a bulk buyer, if you like, so that we can achieve the goals in the economies that we're looking for? Or is that, are we keeping that separate and independent?
I think that that's a really interesting suggestion. At this point, there's been a lot of organizations and the members really trying to understand what social procurement, how it fits within their structures, how to train their staff and get that. It's a bit of a culture change. So it's allowing that culture change process to come through. I think that at the steering committee level, that's exactly where that kind of conversation should be held. And happy to, I think Ian might be something to put onto the agenda to talk about at the next steering committee.
Yeah,
thank you.
Sorry, add to that.
Yeah.
There is, I think as part of one of the things we are talking about maybe moving forward as an action plan is this request for information to kind of get a list of social enterprises. And that is something that we are trying to work with other regions. We're a neighboring region to the Capital Regional District, and they've already done this process. So they've got a lot of vendors that would be eligible to work in our region and vice versa. So there is opportunities to leverage between regions, especially with training and opportunities. So just add to that.
Yeah, there's the training goes across the organization, so there's a lot of shared value. We have a community of practice that goes across all the organizations where people can attend, and the vendor RFI is meant to be island wide and coastal wide. So those opportunities are coming up for collaboration.
That's great. And Mr. Chair, if I wouldn't mind a quick follow-up. Yeah, I'm a great believer in training, especially with the younger people. We need to bring that generation on so that they're not stuck awaiting opportunities. So thank you for that. That's a great idea. Do we have in the CVRD a list of approved suppliers? And if we do, is there a list of those? And how often, if we do have a list, are those approved suppliers reviewed to make sure that they're still meeting all the goals that we wanted?
So through the chair, I'll take that question. No, we don't have, and in terms of social value, I'm assuming the question comes from somewhat of a social value. No, in fact, that's a recommendation in the staff report, is to do much like the City of Victoria has already done, is to generate for some of our smaller P-card spends, this directory of social enterprise businesses or businesses that meet sort of community objectives, and to educate our staff, but also educate those vendors on the opportunities to supply their services to the CVRD for some of those items that don't meet trade treaty thresholds, but that we buy all the time, like janitorial services, catering, landscaping, things that we're in constant need of, that we could be looking to our own community to be providing that. That's kind of the intent of the action item in the staff report to follow, is to create that same directory and make it available to staff to use as they see fit.
Good stuff. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the two presenters as well. It really is very interesting.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I'm wondering what's planned as far as impact measurement goes.
Just so that I can make sure I understood the question, that you were wondering what the plan is for the impact measurement?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, absolutely. So we've created an impact measurement framework for all the members to use, and we've connected the impact measurement framework to the UN Sustainable Development Goals so that you can look and create it. So I'm happy to share that around how it looks at where your goals are for your community, how it aligns to the SDGs, which is a global impact framework. And then it's down to how do you incorporate that into your RFP process, and then what are the key performance indicators that you will use to ask your vendors to measure. So, and we've made this really simple and standardized. And the exciting part is that Royal Roads now has got a SHIRT grant to actually provide some of the muscle behind measuring the impact. So they've hired a person. She's come on in the last month, Isabella Braun, who is going to be providing that impact measurement support to the members.
Great, thank you.
You're fine with that, Director Nicholson, or did you have a follow-up?
Thank you.
Okay. Director Morrison, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Christy and Aaron, and just so that the committee is aware, we really tried to get this group in front of us earlier, and COVID hit, and I just wanted everyone to know that I first started liaising with this group as part of ABICC, and then when the electoral areas decided to move forward and to participate, I've been attending meetings, and the neat thing about this process is that when Scale came on board and when this really started to get legs, all of those really basic questions like, does this cost more money? Well, the answer is no. What kind of benefits? And we've actually started to see some of those success in some of the pilot projects that they've talked about coming forward. And this has always gone on whether or not a contractor's had to provide an extra bench or something as part of their contract. Now it's quantifiable and measurable. And I'm looking forward to seeing the discussion around Aaron's report. It's pretty exciting, especially with COVID happening, that we've got a tool that can really sort of amp up our response in the regular spending that we do already, and it doesn't cost us extra dollars. So thank you, Christy. Great job, and look forward to the next time we meet.
Thank you.
Was there a question in there? Never mind. That's good. Thank you, Director Morrison. Any further questions or comments? Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Ms. Mader. We look forward to the staff report, which is coming up next. Oh, Director Staples, did you have? No.
Can I make one final comment?
Okay, before we do the virtual clap, you may do that.
I was going to say, if you would like to join, if you're, I mean, maybe the Cowichan Valley is a member. Any of you who represent any of the municipalities would like to join, just get in touch with us and we'll connect you to the steering committee to answer any questions you have about becoming a member.
Great. I'll be reaching out to our CAO and mentioning that on how we can join in the town of Lake Cowichan as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Now we'll do the virtual clap.
And now I leave the meeting, I think. Thank you. Contact us if you have any questions.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No correspondence or information items, so we're on to staff reports. Item R1 is a report from the Finance Division on social procurement objectives and next steps. The proposed recommendation, would you like me to read that now or wait until after the discussion?
Let's read it now so we have basis for that. Thank you.
That it be recommended to the board, 1, that the CVRD continue to participate as a member of the Coastal Community Social Procurement Initiative to explore opportunities, access training, and pursue next steps for social procurement in alignment with the updated corporate strategic plan. 2, that the following short-term action items be pursued in 2021 to support social procurement and economic recovery tools. Work with CCSPI on advancing a request for information process to identify a directory of local social enterprises and businesses available to respond to smaller dollar goods and services requests as a means to recognize community benefits and support economic recovery activities. With the assistance of CCSPI, develop pilot projects to test procurement criteria in action, evaluate results, and apply lessons learned to refine objectives and best practices for longer-term policy updates, and report back to the board with findings, lessons learned, and potential policy updates for consideration in late 2021.
Thank you for reading that. That would not get a gold star in any motions moving forward, but it is very informative. I have a mover and a seconder. Open for discussion now, looking for hands. Did we want some input from staff on this? If not, I'll call the question.
Well, I mean,
Dr. Nicholson.
Thank you. I think this is an important initiative, a really important initiative, and I think there's a huge opportunity here when we talk about economic recovery with the COVID to do some good communications to the community about this. And I would like to see maybe that happen in more of a proactive, as soon as possible kind of a way, rather than leaving it till the end of 2021.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I missed Mr. Carruthers. You were going to speak on this, sir?
yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank Erin for her work and to say that, you know, we've been exploring this for some time. COVID kind of got in the way of us moving this forward, but as you have indicated in your strategic plan, this is a priority for the board. We're going to take a very methodical, slow approach to implementing this. I think there's a lot of awareness that needs to be raised with staff as to what social procurement is and how it can work for us. But I see it being a very valuable tool as we go into economic recovery from COVID. And I agree with Director Nicholson that we do need to do some messaging in the community. We've had some opportunity to have the business community out. Erin attended a chamber-sponsored event. I think the attendance of that indicated that there is a lack of awareness in the community about social procurement. So we'll work on getting that word out, not only to the community at large, but our business community as well.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Carruthers. Anyone further? I think it's a great opportunity as we do move forward to recover for local recovery through the social procurement initiative, and by getting that forward to not only the communities that do participate in the electoral districts, but those outside municipal areas that are not currently involved as to how they can help local recovery as well by engaging in this process is important. So I look forward to further discussions moving forward and getting the communication out there on this initiative. So thank you very much for the report. If you're ready, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Thank you very much. Next, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item R2 is a report from the Finance Division on the Saltaire Water Parcel Tax on Split Properties. The proposed recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that the CVRD refund $580.75 to the owners of each property charged to parcel taxes as a result of the school district's boundary adjustment in Saltaire, subject to the following. 1, property owner providing the CVRD with a letter to the Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel requesting omission of the second folio from the 2021 Saltaire Water Parcel Tax Roll, and 2, proof of payment of 2 parcel charges in 2020 for Saltaire.
Have a mover and a seconder. Discussion on this? Yes, Mr. Sebring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question. When I look at bullet 1 of the motion here, that property owners have to provide the CVRD with a letter, are we doing communication to them? Because I'd hate to be in a position where we pass this and a year from now people go, oh, we didn't know. I mean, this has to be sort of a two-way communication street, because otherwise, I mean, I'm sure some of them are pretty aware because they got 2 bills, but what are we doing to message this motion into the community, I guess is what I'm asking.
Through the chair to Director Sebring, unfortunately, this is through the parcel tax process where there's advertisements and letters and those type of things that have gone out. So staff are unable to necessarily contact the people. That's why we're leaving this as an open so that they can apply at any point in time and be refunded based on that amount of money. So that's where the recommendation is going. At this point, though, I can say I've been probably contacted by the majority of the property owners, and every property owners that the finance staff do talk to says if there's somebody else that they know of, please contact them, because there's no way of us being 100% sure of how many and which properties exactly were impacted by this.
So just to be clear, there is no deadline. People can apply 5 years from now if they find out about it then?
I've left this open-ended for the 2020 year, yes.
That's not what I asked.
It's left open for the 2020 year at this point only.
Okay, so it does have a deadline. All right, thank you.
Director Smith?
Thank you. I'd just like to say I thank the staff for all the work and effort that went into this. There's approximately 8 property owners that have had a creek run through their property that divided them into 2 school districts. It's amazing what a creek can do, and somebody using a creek as a division line. So I definitely thank the staff. It's been a bit of a long haul on this one, and I really, really appreciate it. I know that the taxpayers in Saltaire that have been impacted by this additional water fee or tax also appreciate all the work that's gone into this. So I'd like to thank the staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? I'm sure that we can have a look at the end of 2020 whether all the responses of the properties involved have made contact with the regional district, and if need be, can be extended into the next year, I'm sure. Yes, Director Sebring.
Just a question. I thought I heard Director Smith say it's 8 properties. That's all we're talking about here? Okay, well then no, thank you. I thought it was more.
It's not a big creek. Okay, are we ready for the question? All those in favor, please? Those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item R3 is a report from the General Manager of Community Services on regional recreation public approval options. Proposed recommendation is that it be recommended to the board, 1, that a referendum to seek elector approval to implement usage-based funding of the 9 regionally significant recreation facilities be held in conjunction with local government elections in October 2022. 2, that $50,669 the Regional Feasibility Reserve Fund be used toward regional recreation communication and approval process costs. 3, that staff prepare a supplemental request to include $20,000 in the 2021 and 2022 budgets under Function 100 General Government towards the cost of a referendum in 2022. And 4, that staff prepare a supplemental request to include $25,000 in the 2021 and 2022 budgets under Function 100 General Government for a facility use analysis in 2021-2022.
Thank you, Ms. Legault. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this one? Moved, seconded. Discussion. Yes, Director Sebring.
Thank you. I read the report. Maybe I missed it. I just need some clarity on the nature of the referendum. I know there are 2 kinds of referendum within regional districts. One is a vote where every electoral area and municipality has to approve or deny. The other is a sort of a collective global question like we asked last time with respect to housing and water. Which one of those animals is this?
Mr. Elzinga.
Quite shortly, it is the second one, Director Sebring, through the chair to Director Sebring, that it would be a global referendum.
Okay, thank you. And the other question that I have goes to the bullet 2 of the recommendation, and that is with respect to communication and public approval costs. That's not for the referendum, that's for the communication piece. I'm hesitant to ask this, but I'm going to. what kind of communication are we envisioning on this? Are we corporately mounting a campaign in favor of it the way we did with the water and the housing, or are we doing what I would consider more neutral messaging, such as what was done by Duncan and North Cowichan in the context of the amalgamation discussion of a couple of years ago? Has staff been given explicit direction on this? Do we know what we're doing? What kind of
Thank you, Dr.
communication?
Sebring. Mr. Alzinga, you'd like to approach this?
I'll try, Mr. Chair, through to Director Sebring. There will be different impacts in each jurisdiction for this new funding model. So the communications would be centered around providing that information to the residents of each area. There would be separate communications for each jurisdiction. The communication package, as is outlined in the report, is informational materials.
Does that suffice, Director Sebring?
As opposed to advocacy, if I could use that term, it's a bit overused.
If I can, Mr. Chair, through to Director Sebring, staff have not been advised of any advocacy at this point.
Thank you.
Mr. Carruthers, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And that is something that staff would appreciate direction from the board. I appreciate Director Sebring's comments about the approach that Duncan and North Cowichan took on their amalgamation referendum, and I think that approach was understandable. You know, from a staff perspective, in all my experience of going through referendums, when a board or a council chooses to move in a certain direction for a service, staff stand behind that direction. So naturally that we would be advocating on behalf of the board or to do that. If we receive direction from the board to take a very specific approach to communication, I think that would be advisable so that we don't run into some of the confusion that resulted after the last two referendum questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carruthers. I have Director Acton next.
Mr. Chair, I think you must have missed my hand. I thought you'd acknowledged it.
I will put you after Director Acton if you don't mind, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Sebring, for bringing this up. Personally, at this point, I don't like the sounds of a tailored presentation for each group. I think if it's a regional item, we should all be aware of the outcomes for everybody and be given all the same facts. When with the watershed function, that precisely was something that was that it becomes a consultation or instead of an actual education program. So personally, if we're talking about how we're going to lay it out, the engagement part, that's where I am at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe that that was more of a comment. Thank you. Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm glad Director Sebring brought this up because I have some misgivings about this as well. It has to be brought, obviously, to the public to be answered. And the way it's done has to change from the way it was done last time. There was advocacy. There was no two ways about that. We should, the board will, I hope, give direction to staff. And I hope that the board will also have input onto way the questions or that the referendum is asked and presented, because you can ask questions in a way that will come up with a prescribed answer. So it has to be a question which will be answered by the population as their true feelings, as opposed to something which they're being led by, if that makes any sense to anyone.
Clear to me, Director Wilson. Thank you. Director Stone, I have next.
I think that I understood that the communications would be the same. It's just that the financial impacts will be different for each area. And that's what they mean by specific messaging to each area, is to highlight the financial impacts to those electors, because it's going to impact most in very different ways, right? And it is a complicated thing when municipalities go from a self-funded model for their recreation centers, and now we have funds flowing in and out of a newly established regional function. So that's how I understood it. But my question is in the past, both the referendum question and the basic parameters of the communications effort came to the board for approval. Would that not be the case in terms of this referendum? Right. So this is a discussion for when that gets presented to the board. We can discuss the communication materials that are in front of us. I think staff have heard the feedback, not only today, but going back to those previous referenda. And we can look at the communications and the referendum questions when those come back to the board. For today, I'm happy to support the resolution.
Thank you very much. Director Morrison next, and then Director Kuhn.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And given the clarification from Director Stone before me, I was actually going to ask that the question be called, because this is just about fiscal for the budget for the upcoming year, and the content will be brought back to us at a later date. But I see you have Director Kuhn. I would ask that it be called after Director Kuhn.
If I see no more hands, I will apprise you of that request. Director Kuhn.
Yes, I just want to make sure if we report to the individual areas, that also the table that outlines the plus and the minuses on each area also be published. Because if we go to, let's say, to an area that is going to be a net payer, or let's say a payer that pays more than previously, and they don't understand why that is, then I could imagine there'll be a lot of reluctance to sign up to that. And but if they are shown that, let's say, their area has taken advantage to a certain point in another area and haven't paid for it, so there's an understanding as to where the money actually is going and why it is, I think that has to be done. Otherwise, there'll be nothing but misunderstandings and unnecessary.
Director Sebring to close.
Sorry, thank you. Director Kuhn brings something up that also part of the communications piece. This is not a threat. It's nothing like that at all from North Cowichan, but the reality is that if this thing doesn't proceed as envisioned, we're back to, at the North Cowichan table, discussing two-tier, and particularly for the aquatic center. And, you know, the city of Duncan, I'm sure, would be on board with that as well. So that also can be part of that communications piece. You know, you can either pay us here now or you can pay us later, potentially, because, you know, either way, it has to be paid for. So I just want to give staff a heads up that maybe it's only a line or two in the communications piece, but it's certainly an integral part of that discussion. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I agree, it is integral. But as Director Stone said, the impact to every area is different as to the usage, and that's important for the communication piece, to initiate who is using which facility and from which community. I think that's important before you come forward with financial implications. And I see a hand of Director Smith, and I will recognize her.
Thank you. The number 4, where we're going to be doing a facility use analysis in 2021, 2022, we are still looking at COVID, probably longer into the future than most people are wanting to look. Is this being considered in this point 4 for whether we do this in the future, depending on if we are still under COVID, or will we not continue with this?
Thank you. Mr. Elzinga, would you like to try this one?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Chair, through to Director Smith, and it is an excellent question. We are going right now budgeting for the intention, the anticipation that we will be able to do this facility use analysis. Of course, COVID or any other impact may impinge upon that in the future, and if there are any changes to that direction, we'd be seeking that from the board.
Thank you. Test the floor. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? I hope that was just a delay, Director Nicholson. That motion carries. Thank you. Ms. Legault?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No unfinished business or new business. I will just check the inbox for question period. And we have not received any submissions for question period.
Move to adjourn.
Your microphone, Director McGonigal.
Yeah, muted, Tim.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Thank you very much. We'll see you later.